It's week 6 on Making Nations, Making States, and now we are turning attention to museums. Very familiar institutions, they're part of our usual day-to-day experiences. Well, I say usual day-to-day, COVID has kind of compromised that, but outside of COVID, it would be fairly common for us to be passing museums or to hear about work that museums are undertaking. They are very familiar parts of our cultural landscape. And there are reasons for that. Museums play a fundamental role in the process of nation building and indeed nationalism as we work our way through much of the 19th century. So that's the theme that we'll be exploring during the course of this week's session. As we look at it, we will be opening our last few sets of Japanese single strike cards. There's a bit of a global shortage on Pokemon cards at the moment. So I don't know, as we get into week 7, we might have to open like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something. I know nothing about Yu-Gi-Oh, but we have some cards up there, up on the top shelf somewhere. Okay, so museums. Why are they significant in this period? Well, first of all, as we start off with the Murkrow. First off, it's important to appreciate that attitudes towards collections and collecting are profoundly changing. A little Esper there. The French Revolution sees a sort of a liberalisation of collections. That which was previously private in tone and focus suddenly quite rapidly becomes public. I mean, you think of sort of private collections being broken up, well, actually not being broken up, but being broken out of their formerly private domain. I mean, if you think about what's taking place in Paris, you're seeing a lot of private collections and palatial complexes being opened up to the general public for the first time. So it's sort of changing the relationship, Big Pig, the relationship that people have with their national collections. Indeed, the idea of having national collections is something that emerges arguably for the first time. I mean, we do have one or two European examples where there had been sort of municipal collections of objects for educating the people. But generally speaking, that was quite rare. As we get into the 19th century, that becomes far more commonplace. And you really see what might be best described as a sort of a culture race, as respective nations sort of look to start outdoing each other in terms of the quality of their collections. This is in part... Ooh, nice shiny gold back there. Nothing terribly special. Rolled up scroll. It's sort of getting into Yu-Gi-Oh territory with cards like that. So yeah, I'm sorry, where was I? The rolled up scroll has thrown my focus. What was I talking about? Museums, nation building, the changes taking place, public collections. Yes. French Revolution. Yes. So French Revolution, we start seeing objects being... What's the best way to describe it? Let's call it looting, because that's what was taking place. Looting from around the world. A hone edge to kick us off with this pack. Napoleon plays his part in this, bring collections from Italy, Egypt, and so forth. And as French museums start to sort of take shape in a recognisable form, attitudes around Europe begin to focus on what's taking place in Paris. People become aware of the grandeur of Parisian and French collections, and they look to start outdoing France. So that's where this oh, that's a Tapu Koko, a big old full art Tapu Koko. Cool. That's not bad for our penultimate pack. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good. We'll have that. Cool. All right. So nations start looking to outdo each other, and that's where we get this idea of a culture race kicking in as nations begin to sort of pursue each other as they look to sort of outdo each other. And really, one of the factors that led to things like the Parthenon friezes or the Elgin marbles, depending on which side of that particular debate you fall on. So we're building up to this, the last pack of Japanese cards. One of the factors that led some politicians to speak in favour of having those collections coming into a British setting was, in a sense, to outdo the grandeur of Paris. And you see some parliamentarians using that exact language. Let's see how we go. Last pack, and it's a Morpeko! It's not special. I love Morpeko. What a brilliant Pokemon this was. Look at him. Look at him throwing away that apple core. Messy Morpeko. And so really that sets a tone for the nature of collecting, as it changes quite profoundly. What's being done with those collections? Well, part of it is to outdo other nations. There's a hint of nationalism that comes in there, but we also have narratives about what the nation is coming through in these collections. And this is the last card, and it's a Drumper. It's a Drumper. Our last card from the Japanese pack. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's all empty, all gone. That is the end of our Japanese adventure, apart from the other box of Japanese cards I've got, but maybe that's for next time. So, education through collections is something that comes through in the museum building process. But really that race to sort of outdo other nations is something that's going to become a profound part of the story. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the way in which nations are trying to outdo each other through their museum collections, but we'll also have a consideration of the sorts of stories that museums are being compelled to tell about the nation and where that particular nation fits in the wider global scheme of things. All of this is there to educate people. It's educate the right word. All of these institutions and collections are being put together to shape public attitudes towards what the nation is and how the nation stands up to other nations. And we'll look at a raft of European museum-based collections and examples which illustrate that point very effectively. So that's what we're going to be doing for the week ahead. Have a look at the Sharon McDonald article in the reading. That's going to serve you well for this session. That's if you're doing the session. If you just happen to be around, then check out Sharon McDonald's work on museums and nationalism as well. It's an interesting paper. All right, guys, I'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.